Hello YouTube. In today's video I'm going to discuss whether or not Greg Doucette's MainGaining is keeping you small. It's a video I promised at the start of the week, and it was of course inspired by Revival's fitness video on the topic that is 2 hours long. This is not a replacement for that video at all, because I'm not going to repeat his points. His video stands alone as a demonstration of Greg Doucette's practices, and there is no need to repeat what he said. He did the job perfectly. Everything I'm going to present today is my opinion based on what he presents. And it's my second response video to the guy this week, because even though I disagree with him on a lot of points, I must admit that he offers some very thought-provoking perspectives, and it gives me a ton of things to talk about. So let's get into it today. I'm not going to spend too much time on the drama per se, even though you will see that there is almost no drama. In Revival's video, that's again 2 hours long, there is almost no semblance of toxicity or anything that could be pinpointed as negative. It's pure information, and I'm going to try and do the same because this is the perfect excuse for me to discuss diet, MainGaining, body dysmorphia, and progression in general, which are the most important parts of Revival's video, in my opinion. I will not show snippets of the video. I tried to edit it and do something proper, but I have found that it just isn't my style. It doesn't fit me, so you guys will get an uninterrupted segment like I always do. And again, it will not be repeating any of Revival's points because it's not needed. So I'm including his video in the description. It's the first link. Do yourself a favor and watch it. You don't need to watch it to understand this video, but it's a worthy watch. He put a lot of work in it. It's an intelligent piece of work. So do yourself a favor and actually consume that content. For once, there's quality information on YouTube and it's well presented with a good rhythm and a good pacing. So actually go and patronize something that actually took a lot of work. However, despite his video being very lengthy and well thought out, there are a few details that I want to actually insist on and things I want to disagree on or wait on and explain in more details. And I want to offer a more balanced point of view as well, because even though this isn't technically drama, there is some antagonism between Greg and Revival, and they clash because their point of view is very opposed. I'm more of in the middle, and because I, in a sense, also was antagonistic towards both Revival and Greg, I made videos where I disagree with them both. I do believe that I can offer more of, again, a balanced perspective on the topic because I'm neither on Greg's side or Revival's side. I'm on the side of truth, what I consider to be the truth. And since I myself used to preach MainGaining in the past, and I still do, it sort of also positions me as someone who needs to play devil's advocate because it is my personal opinion that is not MainGaining that's keeping people small. It's what Greg Doucette made of it. And I'm going to get into that right now because when I use the term MainGaining in my mouth, that means a lean bulk. If you go see my video on the topic, that's what I meant. And in that video, I said that I thought that in that form, the concept was gold. But it's because at the time, I thought that Greg was also pushing the concept in that fashion. I did not realize the extent of the manipulation that was going on. So when I say MainGaining, to me, it's a lean bulk. And I don't really see how it could be anything else because it makes no sense to call a recomp MainGaining. When you recomp, yes, you gain muscle, but it's not enough to justify calling it gaining anything. You stay the same body weight. So that already is a red flag about the concept of MainGaining per se. But the true issue, and something that Revival pointed out perfectly, is that there is a large amount of confusion surrounding MainGaining. If you ask two different people what it is, they'll give you different definitions. And that is not normal. If I ask you, for example, what is a bench press, You're not going to start saying, oh, it's the thing with the dumbbell like this. No, we all know what a bench press is. That allows us to talk about something without having to go through the lengthy description or having to explain to people what it is. We give names to things because it facilitates communication. But in this case, it's the exact opposite. The more you speak about MainGaining, the least you understand it. The more you listen to Greg himself, and the more confusing it becomes. That shouldn't be the case. It should be the exact opposite. And that's for one reason and one reason only. Greg himself cannot keep his story straight. He's like a 5-year-old that stole some chocolate and just gives different stories every time you ask him to justify why the chocolate is gone. One time it's the dog that took it, then it's a bird, and before you know it, you have an entire story about aliens that just invaded the house. It's concerning coming from someone who's a big YouTuber that he's not even able to keep his own concepts straight. And that leads to a large amount of semantical dishonesty because you cannot pinpoint the guy. It's extremely tough to argue or to try to come to any logical conclusion with someone who cannot be pinpointed because it's like they speak a different language. And when Greg says MainGaining, well, MainGaining is not English. It's something that he made up. But he did that for a very simple reason. He did that because it allows him to always reposition himself to always be in the right, regardless of why you want to actually discuss MainGaining with him. He can always shift the definition. So in his mouth, MainGaining can be recomp, so the exact maintenance calorie, or it can be a lean bulk up to 300 calories, and in between. This is way too big of a definition range, of course, but it's exactly what he's been doing. And if you look at the footage in Revival's video, he actually shows that. Just by quoting Greg, you get 50 different types of definitions for the term. It also allows him, of course, to take credit for his subscribers' progress, something that is part for the course because every single fitness YouTuber does that. But in this case, it's particularly vicious because regardless of how you got your gains, Greg Doucette will tell you that you main-gained. Why? Because that way he can just say, oh, you followed my advice and you gained. See, guys, if you main-gain, you'll get big. It, of course, doesn't work like that. But it's especially bad in Greg's case because, as I've said in the past, he is YouTube fitness gatekeeper. He is the person that most people are going to go through when they first discover this platform and lifting. He's going to be their very first source of information. This means that he has a lot of responsibility on his shoulder because a gatekeeper can be a great thing or can be a horrendous thing. There's a ton of communities that got destroyed because the people that gatekept them did a terrible job. And I do believe that in this case, we can assess that this entire MainGaining debacle is the proof and the demonstration that Greg has not been fulfilling his role of gatekeeper properly. And to his audience of beginners, that also leads to problems down the line. Because when you have people on your channel who know nothing, and you supposedly know a ton, you have a position of superiority on them. They trust pretty much whatever you say. Even on a channel like mine, where I tell people to always trust themselves and to develop critical skills, I still have a position of authority over people. It's just the nature of the beast. But if you play into it and you tell your content towards beginners, it gets worse and worse. It's why this MainGaining thing is so bad. Many people could say, well, it's just confusion, it's just a problem of semantics. Yes, you are correct. And if you watch Revival's video, this is most of the problem, is that the semantics are not assigned properly. But the issue is that it confuses the heck out of beginners and it leads them to doing things improperly. Novices have no clue what they're doing. They need to be told in simple and easy terms to get so that they can learn. That's the way you actually get people to move forward. But if on your first day of class, you're supposed to learn 1 + 1 and instead you have 15 times 5 billion on the blackboard and the teacher cannot explain to you how to get there, what are the chances of you actually being good at math in a year or two? They're very, very slim. So This responsibility exists both in the side of the YouTuber and on the side of the audience that watches said influencer. But these confusing concepts that keep people in the dark are the reason why that type of video is justified, because when people have their eyes closed and they just bump into each other, it's important that someone shows them how to actually open them. If not, they're never going to understand anything of what's going on. And Revival's video did a good job at that as well. So, when it comes to MainGaining, it's important to be able to say that MainGaining itself is a made-up word. It does not exist. It refers to practices that do exist, but the word itself we don't need. The word was implanted in people's mind by Greg Doucette because it helps him push his products and it helps him promote his marketing campaigns. That is it. It starts and ends there. If tomorrow the word is banished from the vocabulary of every single person on earth, it would make absolutely no difference. If anything, it would actually be beneficial because the confusion would be gone. So keep that in mind. The problem with MainGaining is MainGaining itself. It's the name itself. It's not the concept that it refers to. I will get back to that, but I do believe that if we take a misstep and we attack MainGaining just as a practice, not for what Greg has made of it, it can lead to more problems down the line. Just because Greg is the one to put his stamp on it is not a good reason to discard it. Please don't make the mistake that his fanboys make. Greg Doucette fanboys embrace anything that has Greg's name on it because they trust him blindly. Let us not be reverse fanboys and just push away any concept that he embraces just because his name is Greg and you hate his guts. I have seen that with people who now hate calories in, calories out. Even though it's a principle of dieting that is, yes, simplistic, but still correct in terms of chemistry. So don't make that mistake. It would just be a proof that you are as stupid as his fanboys. Said fanboys were the ones who were led to believe that MainGaining is the end-all be-all of dieting, even though they had no idea what it actually entailed. And so a ton of them did that, but from one person to the other, it meant a different thing. So it was like flipping a coin. This is why confusing concepts need to be banished. You tell a Greg Doucette fanboy, hey, go MainGain, the guy is going to recomp. Another one is going to lean bulk. Another one is going to have a 10% increase, a deficit, etc. It's not stable. You cannot function like this. Imagine if I wrote a program with something called a schmoggle. And a schmoggle could be a push-up, it could be a squat, it could be a deadlift. I give that program to 15 people, they're all going to have a different program. That is a problem because if I'm tailoring the program to their goals and there is one option in the program that's valuable from 1 to 3, how are they supposed to get the results that they want? It's impossible. So that has led to that problem of people who either recomp or lean bulk, depending on their interpretation that is not aligned with what they need in the moment. And because they don't look at their goals, because they don't look at what they actually wanted to get out of MainGaining, well, they simply don't get it. I've said that in the past. If you don't know where you're going, don't be surprised that you got lost. All of these kids that MainGained, they MainGained because Greg said to do it, but they never sunk to understand why. And so they never did, and they got nowhere. There is also the fact that even though it's supposedly random and MainGaining is all over the place, we can assess with certitude that Greg's subscribers are going to lean heavily towards the lean side, ironically, meaning that most of the time, MainGaining is understood as maintenance and recomping. And you could tell me, well, that's strange because Greg himself has sometimes said that MainGaining is lean bulking. And to me, this shows that it goes beyond words. It's also about the personality of the person and what they say on the side. Greg is famous for demonizing bulks and always pointing the finger at fat, at any type of weight gain and saying that it's bad. And that influences his subscribers who subconsciously have then decided that since he hates that, MainGaining couldn't involve a caloric surplus, so they engage in a recomp. And they starve themselves because they don't really know what they need. They don't even know where their maintenance are. So it is the problem that we're dealing with right now. They are MainGaining to get to a certain goal, which is a muscular physique, but the very practice of MainGaining makes it impossible because the semantic confusion that Greg pushes on people presents MainGaining as the best way to get to a muscular physique as a natural. So the people that trust him blindly are going to embrace it, even if they see no results. And I know that sounds insane for the people of you on the channel who have the ability to think for themselves, but understand also that I'm talking about beginners, and not just any beginners. They're normies. They know absolutely nothing about lifting. Everything you've learned throughout the years, even if you have a bad physique and you don't really train much, it's still a baggage that prevents you from being manipulated. These people have nothing. These people are coming from off the street, they walk into Greg's shop, and that's it. It's their first time having any type of relevant information on fitness pushed on them. So he has full control over what they will think, what they will do, etc. And it creates the problems that I just outlined because Greg's idea of MainGaining is mostly skewed towards PD users. If you listen to him, MainGaining is pretty much what would happen to someone on a cycle. Meaning that, yeah, you eat at maintenance or a slight surplus and you get huge off it in like 6 months. Well, that is not realistic for natural lifters. It doesn't work like that. But you need to understand that most of Greg's point of views are skewed by PEDs. He sees everything through the scope of drugs. And he speaks to naturals. That's what the disconnect is. He's not technically lying. You can, at maintenance with no massive surplus, build a massive bulk and a ton of muscles, but only if you take drugs. If you don't, you're going to spin your wheels. That is something that he's not mentioning. His audience doesn't know because they're naive, but it's what leads to that semantic confusion. He's not in his own mouth spouting lies, but the second the lies, the words enter the ears of someone who is not in the know, it becomes a lie. Because in skinny naturals, the way forward, as I've always said, is a lean bulk. It's the reason why I said MainGaining is good. And now I'm confusing the heck out of you because you think, whoa. You just said MainGaining is bad. Yes, pay attention to the semantics. When I use MainGaining, it's a lean bulk. When Greg uses it, it's just whatever he wishes it to mean in the moment. It's the reason why, and I'll get to that, we need to ban MainGaining. Just stop using that term. It's just not a proper way to address things. We already have something called a lean bulk. So just say a lean bulk. Well, lean bulks are the way forward for natural lifters. It's what I've done myself. Most of my best gains were done on a very small increase of calories, consistent throughout the years, and it led to a ton of muscle mass. But the issue is that these people are not going to necessarily want to embrace that because of what Greg is pushing on them. Greg is telling them just to get muscular, as if you could get muscular without any fat gains. So they'll desperately cling to their six-pack, and because in their head, the maintenance of the six-pack is only contingent on the maintaining of their muscle and their body weight, they'll never actually increase their body weight because they think that if they got bigger in terms of scale, if the number went up, they would get fatter. And they're correct. Their body fat total would increase, but not necessarily their body fat percentage because they could be gaining muscle at the same time. So it balances itself out. That is the ab anxiety that was lengthily discussed by Revival Fitness. People who are so afraid to give up this that they'll never get this. So there's that tiny portion of their body that is going to keep everything else from growing. And that is tragical because these people could have gotten more muscle mass outside of the abs plus having bigger abs. That is absolutely correct. You can get bigger and heavier and still have your abs, even have better abs if you know what you're doing. And as I said, it's stupid on their part too because as a skinny man, the best thing that can make you look better is fat. With muscles, of course, but the marriage of the two changes a man. It's what transforms you. Most of the natties that you guys look up to have a ton of body fat on their frame. Look at me. I'm 16-17% body fat. I have a ton of adipose tissue, but it makes me look good. So don't be afraid of that. As long as muscle is being built at the same time, it is good. But since Greg doesn't understand body fat percentage at all, it's impossible for him to actually teach his audience, and that is the truth. Listen to the guy speak about body fat. He has no clue. He's all over the place. Sometimes he says someone is 5% when they're 8%. He says they're 19% when they're 15%. He doesn't have a magic radar or scanner in his eyes. No one does. And at the end of the day, even if someone did, knowing your body fat percentage is almost completely useless. What matters is the way you feel and the way you look. So if you're going to tell me, well, I need to get to X% body fat to main gain, and in that sense, main gaining works, well, you're correct, because now you're doing a recomp. But I personally have been recomping for 2 years. I don't know my body fat. I just know that I got to a point where I was comfortable with my mass and I wanted to refine it. That's all you need to know. That body fat discussion is just adding to the confusion. And you will notice that if you take away the body fat, the main gaining principle and concept just crumbles upon itself because it relies on body fat. So it's two confusing concepts that together are even more confusing. And so without them, without both of them, the reality starts to shine through. And that reality is very simple. Main gaining is a meme. And it's a meme based off of the subjective notions of one man and one man only, Greg Doucette. Greg Doucette that will tell you that if you don't have a six-pack or abs, you're fat, which is absolutely incorrect. And that if you have the ability to have abs, you can still, in a sense, be technically fat. And here is correct. This is what's so striking with Greg as well. He contradicts himself so much that when he ends up saying something that's right, people ignore it. I think it's the worst thing about this entire scenario here is that fanboys will get poor information because they're not going to be able to understand him. And then the people who hate him are going to get poor information as well because they're going to shut down anything he says, even when it's not actually bad, when it's actually good information. Because Greg is not just a clown. He's not just a guy who gives bad info. He used to give good info, and he still does from time to time, but it's just buried underneath layers and layers of bullshit, so most people are going to just throw the entire thing in the garbage, and that's, again, damageable because it's concepts that are valid. A recomp is perfectly valid. Main gaining, if you're at the right body fat and you know what you're doing and you have muscle mass, is valid. But not if it doesn't fit your criteria. If you are skinny, you have nothing to recomp for. So you shouldn't be doing it. It's as simple as that. But because the meme of main gaining is now so prevalent and it's propagated non-stop by Greg's subscribers, well, it's impossible to discuss the term because no one knows what it means. The term itself means nothing. His subscribers cannot keep their definition straight, as I say. Ask 50 of his subs on his channel and they'll all give you a different definition of main gaining, and now he cannot do it himself either. And I think, again, that it's not only his fault. I think that he started pushing the concept because he realized that there was some place in the market per se for recomps, because recomps have never really been marketed to the degree that he has. So he wanted to come up with something sexy. He couldn't just sell a recomp. So he started calling that main gaining, but it just snowballed from there. He lost control of his own creation, and now he is just completely helpless. He has no control over what it means anymore. That's why it just needs to die, right? The concept has run its course. It hurt enough people. Now it needs to simply die. Because the only thing it does now is it decredibilizes recomps, because people are going to say, well, main gaining is stupid and main gaining is a recomp in Greg's vocabulary, so it's bad. And it demonizes bulks for the people who think that main gaining is the holy grail. There is no positive here. It has never been a positive thing, meaning that even when it started, what it was supposed to do, which is popularize recomps amongst people that might need it, it even failed to do that. Because I don't think that many people who were overweight or had a ton of body fat and enough of a base to recomp from ever did MainGaining. It's only skinny beginners and novices. Why? Well, because that's the type of people that watch Greg. I think that most fat people who could have recomped just cut instead. Because if you listen to Greg again also, he's going to tell you that being fat is bad. And he's right. Okay, don't put words in my mouth. Being fat is absolutely horrifying for your health, and you need to get to a low body fat as soon as possible, as long as you don't suicide cut. But it also shows one thing. What he presents to his audience is not always aligned with what is best for them. A lot of his subs who are just pudgy could have benefited from MainGaining, but because he targets skinny novices and he tailors his marketing practices via MainGaining towards the skinny noobs on his channel, it's not used properly, and that is a problem. So, as I said, we need to just retire it. Just stop using the term MainGaining. Give up on it. It means nothing anymore. As I said, we can say recomp or lean bulk. It works just as well. That's why we need to use normal language and speak like normal people. As I said, MainGaining was also a way to glamorize the concept of recomps, and it also sounds interesting and cool, but that's only because it actually helps Greg. It has never helped anyone but Greg. For us, we are just, in a sense, using his own language that promotes his own products. So if you truly dislike Greg and you don't like his concepts, stop using MainGaining altogether. Just banish it from your vocabulary. And that's very important, people also need to take responsibility. I am tired of people who say, oh, I've had an epiphany and I was fooled by Greg Doucette and his MainGaining made me just waste years of my life. You're correct, as I already explained, a lot of that is on Greg's shoulders. He's to blame for that. But you are the one who fell for that, right? You also are to blame for your own misery. You fell for the meme that you could build muscle mass on a caloric deficit or maintenance when you weigh 130 pounds. That is something that you should have been able to see through, and yet you didn't, sometimes for years. Meaning that you mean to tell me you went to the gym for I don't know how many sessions with no strength progression, no muscular development, and you never thought to yourself, maybe the practices I'm following are bad, maybe what I'm doing is stupid. It never occurred to you. You needed someone to tell you to realize, well, in that case, sorry to say that, but you are at fault. Because you got fooled because you're a fool, buddy. It's impossible to get scammed if you're not someone who's scammable. So take a good hard look at yourself. It's not only Greg's fault. Greg can only actually get into people's heads who are too weak in there to be able to preserve their own self. As I said, you might be a beginner. I understand you are not prepared. Still, for your own benefit, for your future, you need to realize that so that it never happens again. If you just tell yourself, well, I was a victim and that's it, you're going to be victimized by someone else on YouTube Fitness again. The cycle is going to repeat itself. Claim personal responsibility as soon as possible. I say that because I have seen many of Revival's Fitness subscribers make the same exact mistake I just described. They spent God knows how many months or years MainGaining with no results. Revival Fitness came in as the savior, showed them the way, showed them that MainGaining was a meme, and now they're going to fall for a second meme, which is the bulk. Now, hear me out. I'm not saying that bulking is bad. I'm saying, however, that if you bulk blindly, like you did with MainGaining, you're going to run into problems. I have still already seen tons of people saying, oh, Revival Fitness saved my life and now I'm bulking and I'm just over the moon. Okay, great. Maybe you're going to get results from that. There's a strong chance that you're a skinny noob that needed the calories. But keep in mind that it also needs to be aligned with your goals. Bulking is going to work to a certain extent. If you just embrace the meme and do exactly what you did with MainGaining, you're going to run into problems as well. Because the bulking meme also exists. Never do something because your hero or your favorite YouTuber said so. Do it because you understand what it does to your body and also because it suits your goals. The two at the same time. If you cannot explain bulks and you don't know how they function, I would say learn first and then get back to it. And you will also be able, if you do that, to understand that, yes, recomps work perfectly well. At some point in your lifting journey, you might want to recomp. But if you never actually understand what it entails, you'll never access the knowledge within the concept itself. And it's a message of acceptance in a sense, because to me, life and YouTube fitness, which is just a continuation of life, is a pendulum. And the pendulum is swinging non-stop. It's on one hand and then the other. And every single time, there's an ideological shift. The shift occurred, in a sense, with Revival's fitness video because he dealt a decisive blow to MainGaining and poor dietary practices. But the challenge now is not to let the pendulum swing the other way. We don't want to go from people who just maingain and starve themselves to people who stuff their face and become fat. It would defeat the purpose. So we need to be able to accept that every single goal is valid and that the methods that go with the goals are valid as well. If you're the type that wants to be more lean, up to you, brother. It's your body and you get to. I'm already seeing people pointing the fingers at men who are in the 11-12% range and saying, oh, you won't make any progress, you're MainGaining. No, they're not, okay? They're just doing what they prefer for their own body. Not everyone wants to be bulky. Not everyone wants to be high body fat. It's a personal choice. And I say that because in Revival's video, he said that there is a range of body fat that is the most beneficial for muscle gains. And he's correct. However, I disagree with the range. The range is not 15% and up. I'm paraphrasing, I'm not saying he said that, but he's skewed towards a higher percentage of body fat. I think that some people are going to be able to gain muscle at 12% body fat, 13% body fat. It is possible. It's up to your preferences. That is something that Greg said correctly, even though he doesn't get body fat, so it doesn't work. But he said that you need to get to a stage where you feel good and then recomp from there. The problem is that in his mouth, it means nothing because if you ask him what is shredded, he'll give you a completely different vision and definition than a normal person. So take that, take what Greg said, and separate it from him, okay? Emancipate the wisdom that could be there and take it for yourself, okay? Look at it through your own subjectivity. Same thing with the bulk. You want to get bulky, don't get as bulky as Revival Fitness would like you to be, get as bulky as you would like to be. That is the way to actually diet properly as a natural lifter. It's always annexed after your own goals. I say that because the pendulum swings. If we are at the recomp stage right now, this means that in the past, we were at the bulking stage, and we were for a very, very long time. YouTube fitness was bodybuilding only at the start, and everyone was lean and shredded bra and with perfect obliques, and everyone looked like shrimps, and everyone was small. And then powerlifting came in, and bulking was much more prevalent to the point that a ton of people went to the extreme. A ton of people bulked way too much, they became fat as a result, and that defeats the purpose of looking good and being able to appreciate the body that you built. So we need to just renounce memes, okay? The MainGaining meme, the bulking meme, they both need to die. We need to talk about practices for what they are, and that is it, because it's important to not confuse the audience. And in terms of confusion, I must say that I perceive some level of confusion within Revival Fitness himself. I am not surprised. It's a confusion that I went through and anyone who bulked went through, and that is the confusion between performance and muscle gains. It is very prevalent in people who bulk to think that weight on the scale equals muscle gains, and that the more weight you can push, the better you are. The more plates you can put on the bar, the bigger you get. That is simply not true. There is some level of connection between your performance in the gym, your tonnage, the weight you push, and the way you're going to grow, but it's not one-to-one. Just because the scale goes up does not mean that what is actually being built is muscle. This is the problem with bulks. The idea that if you don't consume enough calories to grow, you're going to remain small forever can be correct in certain cases, but the counter argument of that would also be to say that just because you consume a ton of calories doesn't mean you're going to build as much muscle as you think. Many people who bulk take it to the extreme. They eat way too much calories and it becomes fat. And even though fat can make you look good, if you go overboard, it's going to make you look fat. It's going to make you look bad. And this is where I actually am found in between Revival and Greg. Greg has body dysmorphia up the wazoo, so anything that is not perfectly shredded is fat in his eyes. But I do believe that Revival Fitness is also more lenient in terms of lean body mass, and he's going to perceive certain people who have, in a sense of adipose tissue, as just bulky and thick, when in reality they're just plain old fat souls. So look in between. Don't be drawn toward one hand or the other. The bulking meme has damaged the lifting career of a lot of people because just like those who waste years and years not putting on any muscle mass because they don't eat enough calories, you, my friend, might actually fall for the meme, eat burgers and fries, and then you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to lose so much fat to get down to where you want to look good that it's going to also waste too many years. Now, I understand that right now it's a straw man what I'm presenting. It's the dirty bulk thing, and just because you bulk doesn't mean you're going to get huge. And that is true, so do it. Okay, don't fall for the meme, don't fall for the straw man. Do a very slow lean bulk and control the amount of fat you put on your frame. You don't need to eat big to get big. That's bullshit pro bodybuilder nonsense. You just need to eat. Give enough fuel to the body. I say all of that again to preserve anyone from falling for misinformation. And to follow up with the confusion between performance and muscle gains, there are two examples in Revival's video that sort of made me raise an eyebrow because to me it shows that he also has a tough time differentiating between the two. And that is the Alpha Destiny and Bugenhagen examples. He uses Alpha Destiny Alex to say that Alex got his lean muscular physique through bulks. And that is undeniable, of course. It's what happened on paper. Okay, practically it's what happened. But theoretically, he didn't need to bulk so aggressively to build his physique. And I'm sure that if you ask him, he would tell you, yes, I went overboard in certain cases. But why did he go overboard? For one simple reason. Performance. Alex likes to chase PRs, and PRs require to put on mass, not necessarily muscle, just mass. And this is when performance and aesthetics don't go hand in hand. It's why Alex cuts down to look aesthetic sometimes, and then in the off-season or whatever you want to call it, when he has goals that require strength, he bulks up, he goes bear mode. But the two don't happen at the same time. You can say that he looks better when he's more fluffy, that's subjective, but you cannot state that he is able to be lean simply because he bulks beforehand. At this point, that is not valid. And I know it's a very popular mindset. I have people who ask me the same thing. They say, NH, are you massive now because you used to be fat? And the answer is nope, because I built 70 or 80 pounds of lean mass, aka muscle plus fat plus water, on a lean bulk where I never got fat. I went to 110 to 190-ish, more like 180-ish, only on a lean bulk, and I never was chubby, ever. I got chubby when I started eating way too many calories, and yes, I got bigger, but I also got fatter. I consider these years to be wasted years. My best gains were made on a slow, steady, lean bulk, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm certain that Alex would say the same thing, that he doesn't like his dirty bulk phases. And by dirty bulk, again, I mean a discrepancy between the muscle and the fat gains. So that's for Alpha Destiny. I didn't like the fact that Revival used that example. Also, the Bugenhagen example doesn't stand in my opinion because he also got bigger through a lean bulk. All throughout his years, look at him when he was 17, he was skinny. He didn't just balloon 30 pounds in a year, he slowly added weight on his frame. Now he's doing these crazy yo-yo diets, but it's because it serves his goals, just like Alex. Bugenhagen is a strength athlete. He is an entertainer, and he also is someone who chases PRs. So sometimes he gains 50 pounds in a few months. But it's because he wants to have a bench PR. It does damage his aesthetics. Yeah, he gets bigger, but he also gets fatter. He doesn't care, but the practices that he embraces, like GOMAD or a ton of caloric surplus, eating bagels all day, only works for him. Put a skinny novice on that, they'll just get plain fat. So, again, be very careful with the bulking meme. And these examples in that case don't function because these are two people who have already enough of a level in terms of muscularity that what they do works. For you, it won't. If you just chase PRs, want to put more weight on the bar, and you eat, guess what's going to happen? You are going to get fat. So, performance doesn't equate aesthetics. Keep that in your brain. It's incredibly important. If not, you're going to end up like me. Okay? I was 240, completely oblivious to the fact that I was getting really, really fat. And then it took a very hard wake-up call for me to realize, and cutting the weight was really tough. And now I'm recomping, but I wasted time. So don't waste time. Always be balanced. Always. I also want to say that using the weapons of the enemy, like memeing a concept like bulking, is a bad idea. Greg is horrible when it comes to rhetoric because his examples are not valid and his ability to explain things and reason is not very solid. But Revival, when you do the same thing, it creates the same result. Your video is solid as fuck. I'm not going to argue against that. Much examples are perfect, but the ones that are not and suffer are the ones I just explained, where you try to meme bulking as something that is just only positives, and it gets even worse when you use Chris Bumstead as an example, because one, he's a pro bodybuilder, so he's not a human like you and I are, where we're all natural, we function on a completely different plane, and the issue that I see with that is that Greg did the same thing. Greg used another pro bodybuilder to say that MainGaining is the best, but in both cases, the issue remains. You are trying to push dietary practices on naturals by using a PD user as example. It simply doesn't function. So let's just not do that. All right. I'm not saying that you need to cut it out of your video, of course not, but I just want to point it out to make people realize that this is also a problem. Okay. It's a problem in Greg. It's a problem in you. Because the ability to conceptualize things without having to rely on concept, on examples is extremely important. Greg only knows how to explain things through examples because he uses people as social proof. He says, oh, this guy that everyone knows, he main gains, so main gaining is good. Okay? He does that. It's the reason why his fanboys don't understand a single thing he says. We need to be able to actually articulate why things are good and not just say, oh, this big guy on YouTube did it and he's huge. That's the way people have always done it, and it never functions because it takes away the ability of the subscriber to think for themselves. So I say we move away from that if you please. Now, to go back to Greg, because this was the portion about Revival Fitness, I must say that in terms of contradictions, they exist in Greg's rhetoric. I already proved that, and Revival demonstrated that for 2 hours straight with evidence. But the reason why we also need to not be like Greg is because his fanboys are a bunch of hypocrites. So they will gladly point out the contradictions in your arguments that I pointed out without realizing that Greg also contradicts himself all the time. And because of that, it's going to allow them to not face the truth. And I do believe that Revival, your video, the goal of your video was to open people's eyes. So don't give them an opportunity to keep them close and to call you someone who doesn't know what he's talking about. I think it's important. And I think you know that more than anyone because you have been exposed to the dishonesty of Greg fanboys, especially when they call people like you clout chasing. Because apparently, if we mention Greg's name, we're clout chasing, but him name dropping 15 times a week is perfectly okay. Like, if their God does it, it's acceptable, but anyone who does it is a monster and is just there to get subscribers and money and fame. That is the level of dishonesty they're willing to go at. But calling someone who made a 2-hour-long video that's documented clout chasing is the pinnacle of stupidity. And I hope that everyone understands that. They became like that because of Greg, of course, and I think that the amount of damage control he constantly does is also the reason for that, because in their eyes, he cannot do any wrong. Because they're mostly normies who don't understand anything about lifting, so they're very easy to manipulate. And I'm not going to get into that too much. I already spoke about that in length in the channel, but it's a back and forth. Greg manipulates people because they allow themselves to be manipulated, and that also has led Greg to becoming the monster that he is today, where 3 years ago he wasn't like that. Fame and the people who suck his dick constantly turned him into an egoistical narcissist. And now, with the partial relationship that unites him and his audience, it's what created the gaslighting, right? Because Revival Fitness used the term gaslighting to describe what Greg did to his audience. And this is also a point where I disagree. Because to me, he's not gaslighting anyone. Or if he is, he's gaslighting himself first. He's lying to himself, and then he lies to his audience through his own projections, which also, in a sense, constitutes lying to them. But you need to understand one thing. To be gaslit, you need to have to think about it. Meaning that to be able to fuck with someone's understanding of reality and make them question it, they need to question reality to start with. I can tell you for a fact that most of Greg fanboys do not question anything. They take everything at face value. They never actually reason at any point in their life, which also means that they're not being gaslit. They're being just plain old manipulated. The gaslighting portion means that they are also, in a sense, aware of it. There's a part of them that is being abused by that crazy dissonance, but I don't see it happening. Because if it were happening, they would be much more receptive to videos like yours, and they would be able to open their eyes. Understand also that Greg is the same. In my opinion, you also demonstrated that perfectly. He is someone who suffers from eating disorders, for example, but I don't think he realizes that. The fact that he constantly has to eat things that are very sugary non-stop is a sign that he has a problem. But instead of actually facing that, what does he do? He just projects it on his audience. And he did it so much that he turned it into a business. He sells books with recipes full of sugar that he himself consumes. So we went full circle, in a sense. He's never going to be able to recognize that what he's doing is wrong because now it makes him money. And his subscribers are very happy to remind you of that. Revival, how many people told you on your comments, oh, Greg is richer than you, or he has a bigger bank account than you? They have managed to justify the abuse they receive from Greg that steals their money because of his wealth. All right? That's why I say that these people don't think about anything. A ton of them are just not aware. They're not self-aware enough to realize that. But this is also why his points are very irrational and based on fear, and Revival's points are based on reason and hope. I insist this is why we must never copy Greg in the way he argues. Yes, it's tempting, but if we do it, we're just as bad. Most of your video is not like that. Most of your video is based off of facts, off of reason, and it inspires hope. And it's why the video is so good. It's why it's so effective too at opening people's eyes. Because the few fanboys that won't just dislike and call you an asshole and leave will actually have their eyes open. But we need to retain that because that's honesty. Greg subscribers who say, oh, he tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Bullshit. Greg constantly tells his subscribers only what they want to hear because it is what is keeping them buying his products. You have said things that people need to hear to save themselves from the purgatory of MainGaining. Now, it's your job and my job and everyone's job to stay the course. Be careful with the bulking thing. Many people don't need to hear that they need to eat more. They need to be told that they need to be more patient. They don't need to put on so much weight. They don't need to chase numbers. They need to refocus and recenter. We might differ in terms of that. You might contradict with my opinion, but I think that you cannot contradict the fact that a more balanced approach is always going to be better because that's what is leading us to the power to healthily inspire. Greg does the opposite. He pushes people towards poor mental and physical health with his practices. And that is called a black pill, by the way. Something you pointed out as well. And it's what makes Greg's black pills so effective. And why his subs appear so dumb, by the way. You said it in your video. You said that they were being gaslit and you didn't want to say by that token that they were being abused. But I think you should have went that far. They are being abused. Greg's subscribers are being groomed. It's why, again, they appear to be so stupid. I refuse to believe that there are human beings on Earth that are as dumb as I've seen some of Greg's subscribers, and as dishonest. It's not that they themselves are that desperately idiotic. It's more that they've been turned into a being that can only exist on that mode. They have no way to actually think for themselves. They think as a group, and groupthink always leads to abominations of intellectual honesty. So, for us, our goal is, in a sense, to never do that. We never want to become like him, because then our audiences will also become like that. The audience would influence us and would become like Greg. It is something that I don't know about you, but I want to avoid at all cost. And this is what Greg does, by the way. The way he blackpills people is insane. He sabotages your progress. So he tells you to MainGaining, and it's confusing, and you gain no strength and no muscle. Then, because you trust him, you do that, you get no gains, and rationally you should tell yourself, okay, his methods don't work, but because he's your God, you never do it, so you blame yourself. Then he comes around and he tells you that it's because you have bad genetics, so he gives you an excuse. He's not being honest, he's telling you what you want to hear. He's taking responsibility away from you and him. He's saying, hey, you didn't just stay small because my methods are bullshit. It's because you have bad genetics, but it's not your fault, it's your parents' fault. You swallow that up, and it just is keeping you small forever. It's the most potent black pill I've ever seen on YouTube Fitness by far. So he is, in a sense, a gatekeeper that is keeping people small, and by doing that, he's keeping them on his channel forever. They will never leave his channel because they'll be perpetual beginners and novices. And Revival, with your work and your video, you are trying to prevent that. You are trying to prevent people from staying small forever, because the only way out is to break the conditioning. But to break the conditioning, you need to gain muscle, right? It's the only way. The only way to know that Greg is not correct is to enter a caloric surplus, gain mass, and realize, wow, I wasted so much time. But if you never actually do gain the mass, you'll never actually realize it, and you'll be stuck in Greg's dungeon forever. So you have to try. Always try things. Go against what people say, even if it's your favorite YouTuber. And if you try, you would know, in this case, that Greg was wrong. And to know that he was wrong, you needed to try in the first place. It's a purgatory of sort. The only thing that gets you out is your own best judgment. It's the same for bulking. All of the people are going to bulk because Revival said so. If you end up fat or plateauing, or your body starts looking like shit, reflect, understand what just happened. You might just have landed in a different dungeon. You want to be free. But I have good hope that you will, because if you watch Revival Fitness video, you should now be very prolific at destroying cognitive dissonance regardless of where it comes from. I say that again, even though I told you to be very careful, because there is such a thing as savior complex. You might start trusting Revival Fitness to a very high degree because he saved you from Greg. Just because he saved you from Greg doesn't mean that he knows what's best for you, okay? Claim your own responsibility and be the master of your own life. And to finish up, I just want to address Revival directly. First off, great video. Secondly, Greg is never going to answer your video, but you already know that, because Greg only answers videos that are stupid enough for him to argue against. If he's against people who are too intelligent, he just pretends to play dumb, or he again confuses people with semantics. He dodges arguments as much as he can, and if he can just ignore you because you are a mosquito, he will. I speak as someone who is deeply aware of that. I am a fellow mosquito, and I know for a fact that Greg is never going to want to debate me because he knows that he would lose. So, great job. Your video is so intelligent and so well argued that you can know for a fact that Greg will never touch it as long as he lives. The only way he would is to ratio you. So he would do what he did to, I've completely forgot his name. Team 3D Alpha, sorry. What he did to Team 3 Alpha is he just sent his fanboys to insult and send death threats, and that's it. He ratioed him. It's the only way for him to win, because he has an army of fanboys that don't think for themselves and just take his orders at face value. And he'll never stop doing that, by the way. I already said that in the past, because it would require de-mimifying himself, and if Greg actually did that, then he would be held responsible for everything that he has ever done, including MainGaining. And so he's going to go the Affine X route of just ignoring critiques and just damage control non-stop, which is the best way to stay relevant and just keep receiving beginners on your channel, keep abusing them, grooming them into buying your products, and keeping them small forever. The only way out of that, the only way out, is personal responsibility and critical skills. Revival Fortness gave you a way out of the dungeon, but the only one who can turn the key and leave and stay out of dungeons for the rest of their lives is you. So stop waiting for people to save you, open your eyes, think about things, and actually take responsibility for your own existence. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.